Trying to get my music playing. Actually, don't have time. Let's get it started there. For anybody that's here, we have a little prop for you up on the screen there. It says, do you listen to podcasts? And if you do, we'd love to know which ones you listen to, which ones are your favorite, which ones are your go-to ones. Teen's been sharing some of his favorites with me. I can't remember what that one was called. Teen, what was it called?
The Anthropocene Reviewed.
Yes.
Yeah, the latest episode is a great one. It was recorded. So the Anthropocene Reviewed is by John Green, who is the author of The Fault in Our Stars. And he does a monthly podcast, and he reviews. He kind of looks at the human world and reviews things on a 5-star scale. So kind of like a little bit of a parody of how we kind of rank everything these days. Like Amazon's got its own rating system, YouTube, everything. So, and he does it like kind of with a narrative structure. So he one of the episodes is on Mario Kart. And really what it kind of comes down to is like he makes an allegory to how in Mario Kart, when you're leading, you get like worse prizes, or like, the mystery boxes. And then when you, if you're in the back, then it gives you the best prizes, and kind of like as a way of looking at fairness in the world attached to Mario Kart. It's a really great podcast. His outlook on things is really interesting.
Mm-hmm. And you like to listen to it when you're out in the garden?
Out in the garden, well, for me, like I put tons of miles on. Like if you've got any kind of a drive, it's a great way to make. Sometimes it's learning, sometimes it's entertainment, but it's a great way to fill the time when you get tired of listening to the radio.
Awesome. I think we'll get started. We'll just leave that up there, that prompt up there. So anytime during today's session, if you can think of one or something comes to you, feel free to add that to the chat. I am Denise. I am Denise Ladd. I am an instructional coach, and I am very happy to be here today. It's our second episode with our Meetup Mondays, and we got some great stuff for you today. I'm also joined by Gretchen. Gretchen, you want to introduce yourself?
I am the Elementary Indigenous Education Special Projects teacher, and I'm just glad to be here too with my intermediate friends here. Because I was from the world of primary for a long time, so I'm really glad to be learning a lot of new things with my intermediate friends. And we also have Teen.
Hi everyone. Just looking through our participant list, and it's great to see so many people returning this week. And our hope is that we can grow this. We want to make sure that everyone's feeling connected, and that you're not alone in this. That we know that it's challenging work, and it's challenging times. And the more we can support one another, the better off we're all going to be. So I'm really excited to dig into this today. I think that podcasting is a great resource to add to our toolbox, and a great way to engage kids. So that's kind of a little bit of our focus today, but as always, we're going to open it up to everybody to offer your ideas, your challenges, your advice. If you need to vent, we want to hear it.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a good point. We like to share. Last week, we had a lot of great folks come on talking about some interesting things they're doing in their class. Our wish for this session, again, is the same kind of platform. This is wanted to be your voice. So at any time, if you have something that you would like to elaborate on, by all means, unmute your mic and join in the conversation. Gretchen, she's going to be manning our chat for most of the session today. If you have anything you want to share in the chat, again, you can put some kind of a little emoji behind your name, and that lets Gretchen know that you're willing to share. And sometimes we might just call on you. If you have something really interesting that you mentioned in the chat, we might just see if you're willing to share some more of your thoughts. Last week, we put out there that we have some special talents. So I just want to put out there, stay to the end, because we have one of our listeners from last week share one of his very special talents, very, very special talents. We have some other guest folks that we're going to mention in a couple minutes. but decided to get going with our land acknowledgement. So this is actually a photo that I took. It's called The Place of Many Grasses, and it's out on the Fairfield Museum on Longwoods Road or number 2 highway. More specifically, it's a tribute to Tecumseh, and we're in the battlefield where he died on October 5th, 1813. Wisdom is the name given to the structure. It contains some symbols of the Anishinaabe culture and provides an open feel that it touches the ground at 4 points. The sculptor is Gordon Reeve. He wanted to give the important Shawnee leader Tecumseh and all First Nations folks a suitable place to contemplate, meditate, and understand. There's all kinds of mixed grasses that are planted, and there's also a very unique 2-row wampum pathway that go around the structure. There's some benches there if you want to have a little sit down, inscribed with some words by some of the contemporary Indigenous people that combine to honor those folks that live in the area. Very, very, very cool. So as I say, we are joining you today from the Lambton Camp District School Board, which is the traditional territory of the Chippewa, Potawatomi, Odama, and Delaware nations. These nations agreed through their ancestral languages to the mutual sharing of the land with obligations and responsibilities to the environment. And today, these responsibilities and obligations extend to all people.
So I'm just going to start here. Last week, we talked about some lessons that you could do with your kids or with your students around territorial acknowledgements and different activities that you can do, writing letters, making commitment to the land and to the people when you're making those territorial acknowledgements. This is one of my favorite podcasts that I always listen to. It's called Unreserved with Rosanna Deerchild. And she travels all around Canada speaking to different Indigenous groups and Indigenous people. And this episode here, the Redrawing the Lines, especially is a really cool one because it talks about maps and the strength and the power that's held in a map, and also talks about land acknowledgements and territorial acknowledgements. And it's really, really interesting. I really like this one too because you can click on the link and it takes you right to a website. So if you give this to your students to listen to, it just will take them right to the website here, and you can just click on your episode, and it can break it down into little bits, so you don't have to listen to the whole hour. You can listen to just different short parts of it. So it's a really great website or podcast to listen to, and I really recommend sharing it with your students. There's some information on our blog, on my blog too, like as part of the elementary program department, about different ways that you can use things from the CVC around territorial acknowledgements too, so you can always check that out as well. Okay, thank you.
Awesome.
Okay, so we thought that we would dig into a little bit of something that we talked about last week. Some teachers talked about how they were using podcasts and how they could be as a resource to support students in our remote learning situations. So, James, if you're there, would you mind giving us a brief overview of what a podcast is for those that might not be familiar?
Hey.
Hi.
Outside, awesome.
It's a beautiful day.
Oh, it's beautiful. Lots of birds. What a podcast is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just for those that might not be familiar.
I think someone from earlier times would probably just say it's a radio show. But
Cincinnati, yeah.
It's kind of radio on demand, maybe. You can listen to what you want, when you want, where you want. So it's a little bit more versatile than just, swap shop on CHOK.
Yeah, I think that's a great description. Radio on demand. What is it something that people need to pay for? Kind of how does that work?
Mostly no. There's tons and tons and tons of free content. There seems to be a lot of ones that I seem to enjoy. They usually have like a Patreon, so you can support as you feel fit. But usually there's tons of content that's free.
Okay, perfect. Robin has been very gracious to join us today, and she's we thought it would be really useful to share her perspective on what she's been doing in the classrooms with podcasting. If we'd like to give her an opportunity to share kind of what she's been doing. And we've also made all of these resources available in our show notes. So at the end of the show, everything will be consolidated into one place so that anything that we reference here, anyone here can use.
Hi, everybody. My students, their favorite part of our school day is read aloud. Like, they live for it. It's so much so that I don't leave it for supply teachers. They know, and the next day we do a double session. So I was trying to figure out how to bring read aloud to them, and then looking into all of the copyright issues and how to facilitate that and how to make videos. It was a lot. And then somebody reminded me about podcasts, and I completely forgotten. Since I listened to them as an adult, I hadn't looked into any serialized middle school content. So I started looking into it, and I found a podcast called Mars Patel. My kids are obsessed with. It's actually a Canadian content, and they love it. And it's broken down into 20-minute episodes. So they listen to an episode, and then, trying to find my screen to share with you. Sorry, it's not working. It's my husband's computer. But I found Mars Patel, and what was great about it is they've offered it. It's free. They can access it through, actually I use their YouTube links or their website. So students don't have to necessarily download a podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, or any other specialized apps. They can just use a browser and go in, since there's so many different devices that they're using. And there's now 3 seasons, and I've only had one student tell me that they've heard of it before, but she was so excited that she doesn't want to spoil it for anybody else, but she's happy to bring everybody in. So what I've been using it for is more reading comprehension and using questions that I've always used from the Guide to Effective Instruction for Reading and Writing, actually. So I throw in our slideshow, a link to it, sometimes a refresher anchor chart that we've used in class before, like we would have had up, and then questions for them to go through. And I'm getting amazing responses and really good engagement because they love it. It's something digestible, something familiar. Mars Patel. So I've included that. There are so many, I didn't realize before this, there are so many great podcasts out there. There's anything from bedtime stories. There's one that's kind of an ethics debate one that I know my students love because they love talking about different sides of issues. It's called Short and Curlies. So I think it's a 30-minute podcast, and it throws out an issue of, it's basically like a persuasive unit. It's, should you be having school uniforms, to how should we use school property? And they bring the kids through like an age appropriate ethical debate. And I think it's fantastic. So I'm really happy with the reaction. And of my students who are actually connected in doing my learning, I have 100% of my students doing this activity whenever it comes out once a week. So it's been really successful, and I'm liking the depth of questions that we're getting. Even though we're not able to physically talk about it together, they're still doing really well and having a really well-rounded debate and discussion. So I'm so happy that we're able to kind of replicate that online and with the same amount of enthusiasm. So I know Denise had asked me a question if any of them had gone on to look at previous, the next upcoming episodes and telling anybody. As far as I know, I don't have any students doing that because my group aren't exactly motivated enough to search it out themselves. And two, they actually are really respectful, and they like that like delicious anticipation and excitement that's building. So they at least have something positive they're looking forward to. So I think it's great because they just devour. Like this school year, we've read 11 books in my classroom before break. Like
It's awesome.
It is their favorite thing. They'll, for a classroom reward, they'll have me read for an entire block. And I usually don't put questions. We might have a discussion or talk about a theme, but I don't assign questions usually to our read aloud. But I see the gains in having developed really avid readers and kids that are actually using their library cards and actually downloading apps to read and bringing books home. So I think it's really valuable to, it's not necessarily curriculum based, but it's absolutely helping them discover their passion and their self-guided learning at home. So I think this is a really valuable tool.
That's
I think
wonderful.
that's
Thank
awesome. And
so,
sorry, Teen, I put in the
no, go
chat,
ahead.
narrated by students. The
Yes,
Mars
it's like how I describe it is you're saying like a 1950s, the serial drama weekly radio show, and each character is consistently one voice, and it's really dramatic, and there's music, and I don't know, it's really fun. Yeah, and it's in the show notes. I've also provided kind of the links to the books that I've been using to base questions around, and some other podcasts you might want to look into. I know Mel had mentioned 6 Minutes. 6 Minutes is made by the same production group as Mars Patel, but it's just a little bit older. So I think Mars Patel is really great for grade 5 and grade 6, or really immature intermediate students. And then, at least I have something else. I can say, hey guys, check out 6 Minutes when you're done these 3. But there's so many, like there's hundreds out there that you can find.
It's wonderful. Something that really came out really loud and clear last week in our discussion was that the idea that, like, students are craving connection, right? And something that you're able to do with this is giving them like a shared experience. They're all kind of like, listening to the same thing. You're able to talk about the same thing. I think that's a really important piece of what you're doing as well, and maybe a part of why students are so
Awesome. And I like the fact that she's just using Robin is using the guide to effective instruction to get some good quality questions out of the kids. And you also share with me, Robin, when I asked you if they cheat and look ahead at the video, they don't know what the questions you're going to ask. So even if they do listen to it ahead of time, they still kind of have to go back and listen to it again to answer the questions.
Yeah, and that's what they're doing. And it's funny, they don't mind going back and listening. Some of them, we even developed strategy of them kind of writing down the time. If there's something they want to remember, writing down the time marker on the video. So I think that's, it's a really good tool.
Great strategy, yeah.
To annotate, yeah.
Okay. Thank you for sharing, Robin. I'm gonna jump over to James. James shared a really great resource this week that I think that other people could use. So I'm just gonna screen share here for a moment. And if you don't mind speaking to this, James.
Sure. Yeah, I can. I've been looking for interesting things to help, like, enhance history. I'm an FI teacher, so this is in English, which is unfortunate, but I can probably play around with that moving forward. But I kind of stumbled upon this podcast, and one of the reasons why I like it is because it's a really good fit length of time. He doesn't post too many things that are more than 20 minutes long, which, from working with some stuff with my kids in the past, seems like 20 minutes is about as much as they can take. So I found this one, and I was just kind of listening on my own, just kind of out of interest. I'd go for a run and put a podcast on, but this one struck me, and there's a lot of links to the curriculum and the idea of comparing now and then. And so this one just seemed very comparing how the Spanish flu affected Canadians in 1919 and how COVID is affecting us in 2020. And there was just a lot of, as I was listening, there was just a lot of similarities and a lot of things that I thought kids could pick out. So what I did is I basically, I went through and I made just some straight up comprehension questions. And then I made some opinion questions and I just put it into a Google form that my kids are well versed in using.
Just gonna share that, just a sample of that. So that if you click the link in the show notes, it'll allow you to make a copy of James's form. So he's done a great job of doing a lot of the pre-work here and putting together a variety of comprehension questions that students could complete once they're done listening to the podcast. So that was really kind of him to share.
I put at the end always, I said, did you find this interesting? And I love their responses. They're hilarious.
It was great to see. It was great to see Craig comment on. I was watching this Twitter thread go back and forth, and how excited he was to see something that he had developed be used in a different way. That was really interesting how responsive he was.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks for sharing, James.
Thanks, James.
Before we move on, in the chat, Brandon said that he would like to share something about podcasts and read alouds.
Oh, sure. Go ahead, Brent.
Or you said unmute myself. So one of the things that I did with that relate to both read alouds and podcasts is that I did a read aloud, and for responses to the podcast, I had them, for responses to the read aloud, I had them make a podcast. So every few weeks or so, or every few chapters that we kind of got through, they created their own podcast. They kind of made some music for an intro. They made a icon. They made a title page for it. So they either did a voice one or a video one, and they had to develop 3 questions about the read aloud, and then they discussed it amongst themselves for that. So instead of just kind of having a couple of dry questions, I put a little media, a little oral into it, and just kind of mixed that all together. So,
yeah. Would you use GarageBand, or is there a different app or program that you would use?
They used a mix. If they were making the music, they'd probably use GarageBand for that. But when the last time that I did it, they used iMovie just to make the movies right now. But now it would be super easy if they just used clips or something like that. Just anything that they can video and kind of put together.
Awesome.
Brandon, what book was it you were reading out loud? Putting you on the spot there. Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's I'll type it back in. My usual go-to is Skeleton Creek.
That's the best. Yep.
But the other one, Skullduggery, is the one that I did.
Okay.
For that. So the Skullduggery is a bit of a magic kind of one. So, but yeah. Anyway, I started.
Thank you very much.
Cents.
Great. Thank you for sharing. Okay. I want to cycle back a little. We wanted to cycle back a little bit to one of the things that we're also trying to do, as well as support learning, is also to support wellness and ensuring that kids are feeling connected to one another. And this can be done in a bunch of, some really low tech or high tech ways. I thought it was great that Jen Latta shared last week how she was doing community circle with her class and really kind of just doing that in a simple way. I wanted to share a sample of what she's been using. So this is what she's been doing with her virtual community circle. She's got some really great Bitmojis. And then students are adding their piece on the next slide. So really kind of a simple and clear way to share if anybody's interested in using community circles. Jen, would you mind telling us a little bit about how this is working out?
I knew you were going to ask me. Hi, everybody. So one of the things is I've actually gotten a new student during all of this. So
Wow.
Oh, wow.
yeah, and luckily she's in grade 7. Like I have a 7-8, so like we'll have her next year as well. But just as a way to kind of connect her to the rest of her peers, we've just kind of been like my students. They all have their own numbers, so that's where they kind of put their answer. And so I'm just trying to help her to kind of get to know them, and at the same point, also trying to keep that connection going, right? Bridging that. And, you know, it's a very non-threatening, like the questions have always been so far, like pretty just easy ones, just like we would do like in a circle in the class, you know, that's all. Just a little quick thing.
Perfect.
Cool.
All right.
Thank you very much for sharing that.
Thanks for letting us share that.
It's one of the things that I never thought of happening, and it's probably happening in a lot of other places, is new students. People are still moving in this time, and that's very good that you are implementing this so that makes her feel like she's part of the classroom. Cool, I love it.
So we're gonna try something here today. We don't. We're gonna need Rod's help. We're not sure.
Yep.
We're not sure how it's gonna work, but one of the features of Zoom is the ability to go into breakout rooms. So what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna split up. We're gonna break off into groups of 3, and in your groups, we'd like you to share just something that's on your mind. If you can share successes, challenges, wonderings. We're going to give everyone about 5 minutes to chat on that. There's nothing that you need to do on your end. You'll automatically be assigned to a room, and then when that 5 minutes is up, everybody will automatically come back to the main room. Does anybody have any questions or concerns about that before we give that a try?
It's going to be totally random.
It's going to be totally random. Well, not totally, mostly random. There is one group of 4, and let people know that there'll be sort of a moment that you're in cyberspace waiting to be sucked into this other room to meet people. So it's random. Say hi to the people that are there. I encourage you to use your microphone and camera if you haven't already done so. Maybe at least try and use your microphone to have the chat. But you also have access to the chat tool that's available to you. And I will give you sort of a 30-second heads up just before sucking you all back into the room in about 5 minutes. All good to go?
Rod.
Okay, have a good
Do
meeting.
it. Let's do it.
Let's do
Yeah.
it. I'll see you all in a bit.
I love this reemergence that happens.
Yeah, it's pretty cool because you can sort of click the leave the room button as you're ready, right? So just so that everyone knows, as you come back in, you're muted. If you weren't muted before, you're muted by default. So you can unclick your microphone if you wanted to say something.
That was really neat. I've never done anything like that before. Like the breakout room.
It was
Not crazy.
it worked, eh?
Yeah.
Did we get everybody back? Is everybody back?
Are we missing anybody?
It was funny. Jen and I, we had just the 2 of us in our group, and she's like, "What happened? I thought it was supposed to be 3 of us." And I'm like, "I think probably somebody heard they were going to have to join into the group, and they hit the panic button and they bailed." So Rod joined us for a little bit, and then Matt Sanders joined us. Yeah, that was kind of funny, but
That's great. That's great. Does anybody have an idea that they'd like to share, or one from their group?
Teen, where's your cricket emoji right now? Oh,
Thanks,
I can
Jen.
share. Denise and I were just talking a little bit. One thing that I think is a common struggle for all of us is finding the balance, right? Balance between like home life with if you have your own kids that you're working with, but also in like the availability. Like people are wanting instant responses from you. And it doesn't matter what time they send that email. They want to know right now what the login is and where the link is to that. And like just trying to kind of limit that. We were saying that's a common struggle for us.
for sure. And I think just to jump onto that too, I've heard a lot of teachers say that it's also the time when kids are replying back, or when kids are posting their work in. Teachers are getting dings going off, notifications at like midnight, 1, 2 in the morning. And, you know, I mean, obviously you can't control what your students are doing at home, right? Whether they're on their devices or not. I guess probably the best advice would be just to shut your notifications off, that you're not receiving any of those. But I don't know. It's a tough call. Tough call.
Maybe that's something we can put out to the group. What are some of your strategies you're using to find or create balance between your professional life and your personal life right now? Like, I know for myself, that is a struggle, and something that we've been really working on here is just putting together some structure, right? Like, so my wife kind of like, we take blocks of time and we cycle back and forth. So our day looks very different than normal instructional day would have been.
I think that's a great point, T. I just had a talk with myself on the weekend that I told myself I'm setting myself some office hours, and I'm only between those hours I'm going to respond to work-related materials, whether that's replying to emails or doing some other kind of a work. Because if you don't, it'll consume you, right? The next thing you know, an hour or two has gone by and you're sitting in front of the computer.
Yeah.
It's kind of like being in the classroom. You could be in the classroom from 7 in the morning till 7 at night and still not get everything done that you either wanted to get done or should get done. I know a Google Classroom, one of the things, and I think Seesaw is the same, you can set when you actually send materials to the students. You can schedule a time when they will receive their work or their tasks or their videos or whatever it is they're working on. I think that's an important point. And Lindsay also kind of reiterated my point, saying just turn off your notifications.
Yeah.
You know?
And in the chat too, it's coming up that setting those office hours to let parents know and to let the kids know that these are the times that I will be available and that you will hear from me. So it's just an expectation that I think that we need to set with the kids and with the parents too, right?
Can we cycle back also just in the chat here? Steph shared something that was really exciting, and I thought that we could bring to the group.
Give me 10 seconds. I'm just finishing a bun change. If you really want to know details, but give me just 10 seconds.
Okay.
No worries. Actually, Kristen, can we jump over to you?
Sure, team. Sure. What do I talk about? What we talked about?
Your Kahoot this morning.
Oh yeah. I was just telling him about our teen and Steph was in my group about the value of split screen and using. I discovered, and probably many of you already knew this, but I didn't. But like the tab scissor extensions in Chrome and how easy it is to like split the screen so that students can like do a Kahoot or an activity while still having me present in the meeting as well. And I was celebrating that because I did a Kahoot in science today, and I have 21 students who are virtually online learning, and I had 20 of them show up. So that was the most participation I had in attendance at a Google Meet that I held. So I was just coming off of that and was very excited in my chat room. And it just was a simple extension, and I did a couple of videos on different ways students could split their screens, but depending on the device they could do, and they had that in advance, so they were all ready to go today, so we didn't have any tech issues, and it was just something very simple, but now my mind's reeling with all the ways that I can expand what I can do in Google Meets just by that simple tool.
What was the name of that extension?
It was Tab Scissors. You get it from the Chrome store, from the web store. And then there's Tab Glue that can glue it back together as well. But you can also just drag it right back up to where it was. Because at first I was doing videos on how to, drag your browser down, minimize, tee them up so that they're equal size. And this was just so much faster.
Cool. Tab scissors.
We should add that to the show notes so that
For sure.
everybody's looking.
I'm ready if it's a good time.
Awesome.
Sorry about that. Challenges of parenting and teaching from home.
It's real. It's real.
Yeah.
It is.
Oh man, yes.
So I was just saying to Tina and Kristen in our chat room that I do 2 Google or Meets a week with my kids, but I was trying to find something else to engage and to connect with my kids because they do miss each other in that personal connection. And so my daughter had done a Zoom competition with her cheerleading team, and it was just decorating a cupcake. And her coach told her what to bring, and she had to have everything in front of her. And they had 10 minutes, and they had to make a cupcake to meet the theme. So I thought that's something I could try with my kids, and it wouldn't be for all of them. And I know that it won't be totally inclusive, but I'm going to try to do something every week that meets a different interest. So I thought maybe one week I could do a short little Lego competition, or a painting, something different to engage each of my different minds, I guess. And actually one of my parents just sent me a message right now from one of my sporty boys, and our cupcake competition's on Thursday, and he's spending today trying to make his cupcakes. So that was kind of neat to see that come from one of my kids I didn't expect to. So we're just going to try to do quick little challenges throughout the week, or throughout each week, do an extra challenge to get them to connect with each other.
I like that.
And I think that's going to help to address one of the big challenges going forward is motivation, right? Is that how are we going to keep students motivated and engaged in what we're doing? And I think that when you're being creative like that, and you're giving them lots of choice and things that are relevant for them to do, I think that that's going to definitely help to address that issue.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah.
Sure.
Hi, Gretchen.
Yeah.
Hi. The other one, Brandon mentioned GridView. Another one for Google Meets that's really awesome. I know some teachers are using Jamboard for whiteboard extension, but I found one the other day that was a little bit even better, perhaps, called, geez, I gotta find it now. Google Meet Classroom Extension from like the Chrome Web Store. And if you add it, you can, there's a built-in whiteboard with virtually no lag whatsoever. There's a button at the bottom where you can put raise your hand or put your hand down. You can turn on captions. So it's really nice. It's built right in Google Meet, and students can use that. You can work with students on it at the same time as they're on. It's pretty sweet. I'll add the link in the chat.
Thanks, Matt. We'll make sure we put that in the show notes.
Yeah. And so in the chat, Brandon also mentioned that he sets up time for the kids to do some fun activities. And he played Yahtzee with his kids last week. Do you want to talk a bit more about that, Brandon?
Yeah, so what I did was I used Seesaw to connect with my guys, and I just made an assignment and put it as what they could write on. And actually some kids, when they saw that I was going to do Yahtzee, just found some sheets that they had at home. And we just wrote on the Seesaw, or they wrote on a piece of paper, and I had the Yahtzee page up so that they could follow them. And I just used a virtual dice roller, and I rolled the dice for them and just explained the rules, and it went pretty good. It was fun.
Awesome. Anybody yell Yahtzee?
Actually, our principal, Carla Wilson, got a Yahtzee when we were playing the first time, and then she left.
Oh, cool.
Way to go, Carla.
Yeah.
Matt, there's just a question from the chat here from Sally. Alicia and I were trying out the raise hand feature for the extension this morning. The raise hand feature wasn't available to either of us when we raised the hand. Did it work for you?
Hand feature wasn't visible to either of us. So are you saying a student tried to use it? Oh, there you go. Claire says it's been removed.
Yeah, I think that
since last week. So, okay.
I downloaded that extension that you're talking about today, and the whiteboard is awesome. It works great. But when Alicia would raise the hand, she's just like a coworker, and she'd raise the hand. I wouldn't be able to see when she raised her hand, and when I raised my hand, she wouldn't be able to see it. And so we thought the whiteboard was great, but for some reason that wasn't working for us. So I thought maybe you might know about that.
And my only thought was that one of you didn't download it, but I assume you both did, right?
Both did, yeah.
Yeah.
I saw on
maybe
I saw on Twitter that it blew up. So, and they were having some scaling problems with just like how big it's gotten, how quickly. So that might be part of the problem as well.
Could be. We downloaded Nod, which is an extension as well. And you could raise your hand. It has little like emojis like a thumbs up or raise your hand, other ones. And we could see those well. So that might be something to help.
I like that we're getting all these ideas people are trying and sharing them.
Yeah, just I know it's a lot of, we're referencing a lot of different tools and extensions, so don't worry too much about that. We'll make sure that all of that stuff is collated into our show notes, so don't get overwhelmed by that.
Ben mentioned tab glue. Was that like tab scissors, or is that a different?
I think that was brought up by Kristen because she said that you tab scissors and then you tab glue.
Oh, a little
back
cut and
being
paste
part of this
activity.
today.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it'll put your tabs back together as they were before you split them.
Okay, awesome.
Thanks, Ben.
Teen, I think we should move on in the slide presentation there, maybe? Do you want me to take over sharing?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. So one of the things that we do is we put out a little link that has our show notes on it, and then at the bottom of the show notes, it has a link to a survey that we would for sure like you to take a look at. So we have a plan for next Monday. Next Monday's meeting, we're going to try and make it have a little bit more of a math focus for those folks that have been asking about that. But we'd also like to hear more ideas from you folks. If there's anything that you would like to have us kind of zero in on for one of our Monday meetups, if you could add that in the survey link, that would be greatly appreciated. And I think we're going to go to anybody has any questions right now. Just open it up for a few minutes for that. Is there any more questions in the chat, Gretchen, that folks have?
No, I think we've covered most of the questions. There's a lot of good comments in here today, and I'm pretty sure we've gotten to most of them.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We have to make sure we save some time for at the end with our mystery talented guest that we are sharing. I just wanted to pull this up for one quick guideline too. On the LKDSB remote learning site, Google site, this is under the intermediate tab. We have that 10 hours a week per student is kind of like the guideline that we are narrowing in on. And we just like to focus in on the 6 kind of facets that you should be keeping in mind when you are doing any kind of your work online. It's our understanding that packages went out this week. Since Mr. Hazard's here, he can reaffirm that. Packages did go out this week. Is that right, Ben?
So which package are you thinking of?
I know some folks haven't gotten the first one yet, but they were told it's coming this. I haven't got one yet.
So the packages were mailed, the first ones were mailed the first week of April. So it's taking some time. Canada Post is a bit behind. We keep on our publishing schedule, so hopefully the packages will continue to arrive. So we appreciate the work of the program folks, like the folks on this call who are all writing packages in their free time. But, for an equity lens to make sure that kids have some learning opportunities even if they don't have the privilege of internet access. So if it's not there yet, 2 things could be. Number one, it could be in the queue with Canada Post, possible. Other thing is that we found that some folks had moved and those addresses had not yet been updated with the office. So you might want to check that as well.
Okay.
Thanks, Ben.
Denise?
Yes?
Mary Lynn here. So I had them, they were sent to me as well when they were, so the first set of packages arrived at my place, I think last Thursday. So they were not timely. That was, they went over an Easter weekend, right? And plus we have the Post Canada is not moving as quickly as it normally would. And then the second set that was mailed out on Thursday, today I received one out of the 5 packages. So the other 4 did not arrive with the first one. So that's the kind of stuff that's, you know, probably happening to our families as well. Just a FYI about the paper.
It's not going to come in a constant rate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know I still haven't gotten the first one yet.
Yeah, I'm surprised they haven't got the first one yet because lots of others got it Wednesday, Thursday last week, but anyway, hopefully it starts to show up. But we did find out from principals that we did, like, some people had moved, hadn't informed principals. There've been a few little hiccups like that. We've said if you haven't received it yet, if you're getting complaints that you haven't received it yet from the principal's perspective, so the same thing for teachers, then to double check the address that went to Sandy Venatelli to make sure that it indeed is the address that's going to get it to your house. Because sometimes rural, that's the other thing, right? Rural is a little different than city, and sometimes just doesn't have the exact house number on it. So there's lots of little things that could be happening.
Okay. Teen and Gretchen, anything else you'd like to add?
I just want to make sure that we address Jen's comment in the chat here. So as a grade 8 teacher, I'd be interested in hearing what other schools are doing for their grade 8s regarding awards, ceremonies, celebrating their grade 8s, etc. I don't have the answer to that. I don't know if anybody else has some input there, or Ben or Mary Lynn.
There will be some direction on that coming out. There's a conversation happening. One of the questions I would ask and be eager to hear more, Jen, I have lots of respect for everybody in this call here today, is challenge is what if some people don't have access to digital tools as well? So like to do kind of an online virtual award ceremony or something like that, that works for maybe 90% of the kids potentially. But then what about that other 10% of students? And that's one thing I can tell you from our district. We've really taken an elementary program specifically has really taken a lot of conversation around, we just talked about paper packages, about equity, both we don't want to inadvertently be excluding some. But again, I would love to hear a perspective on that. And it certainly is one that is I think hot topic's probably the right term for it right now. We're all thinking about that. And I know a lot of online chatter with parents, especially of those with children who are in grade 8.
For sure. Some girls probably have their dresses bought already.
Yeah, well, from that financial perspective, Tim's asking also, is there any direction on fundraising funds yet?
So fundraising funds is a little bit more complex. Did it mention it today, Sally? I didn't know if it went out or not. So all graduations will be postponed then. I can say that out loud then. We haven't, but the biggest rationale was about the equity piece. That's why I want to bring that up, because right now we're all connected, right? Yes. But not everyone's able to connect like this. Tim, it's a good point about fundraising. So when we fundraise for something, so there'll have to be a conversation on what that money can be used for. If it's been fundraised, like selling something and just like normal fundraising type activities, movie nights, all that kind of stuff. If it's something that people have already actually paid for the trip, like they've actually written a personal check or a family check for something, then that money should be reimbursed and returned. So that's where there's 2 pieces of that. If the Maver family wrote a check and said, all right, not that your kids are that age yet, but here you go, you're going to Muskoka, great, let's go. That's a whole different conversation than if, okay, the Mavers sold a whole whack of big box of cards. In that case, it's more complex because that money doesn't get returned to the Maver family per se, but we would want to include those families in that conversation, Tim. Sorry.
Yeah, we weren't like, I wasn't necessarily, I knew, we've like our school's already refunded, like the money that students have paid. But like, you know, our school specifically, a lot of our students, like bought in very heavily to the fundraising just because they wouldn't have otherwise been able to pay to go to Muskoka. You know, so we have students that have raised, you know, upwards of $300-400 just through school activities. And I'm not suggesting that, obviously, like I've already explained to them that they don't have access to that money. It's not as if the school is going to write them a check, but we're not sure what that money can go towards in the future, right?
So I think including that conversation, I think it's important that we include them on that in that conversation. Obviously, parents in that conversation as well. What something they think would be a good thing to put that money toward. We want to include students in that conversation and families in that conversation, Tim.
So will there be direction from the board for that, or
you teach at your school? If
or
your principal needs something, they can reach out to me and I can follow up with them 100%.
Okay. Just wondering, like, sorry, is there going to be direction from the board around fundraising, like how it can be appropriated or how it can be used, or like is that going to be like a school-based decision?
So we had kind of provided this kind of framework with some folks. So that's why I have I'm happy to share it. So yes, if there's any need for further clarification, I'm happy to do that so we can share that from like, you know, the board perspective and make sure that we're, you know, money is always one of those weird things that people get concerned about and can get folks on the wrong side of the ledger, if you will. See what I did there? So.
Thanks, Ben. I'm so glad you joined us today,
consider.
answering all these questions. So I think we need to wrap it up, team. Did you want to share the video that we have there?
Sure. Actually, do you mind doing it? Like, I don't have my sound set up here, so
okay.
You want to go ahead? Thanks.
Hope it works. I haven't played it on my laptop. So
it's pretty great.
to clarify, we last week we asked anybody who has any special talents if they would like to share with us. And Jeff shared that he did have one, and his was actually that he could bench press a cat. So I believe Jeff was a trooper, and this is Jeff sharing us his video. Thank you, Jeff. Here we go. That is awesome. And once again, thank you very much for that, Jeff. Oh, let me stop you here so you don't.
And so if anybody wants to share their secret talent in the chat, we can make note of it and reach out too, because we see some notes from last week as well. Oh, yes, please share your secret talents with us. We will love it.
Yes. Thank you very much. And don't forget the QR code for our bit.ly that takes you to the show notes from this week and also to the survey question. We'd love to hear your feedback. And we'd love to thank everybody for coming out today. Hope everybody has a great day. Get out and enjoy the sunshine. And we'll see everybody later.
Yeah. Hope to see you next week. Thank you to everybody that joined us today.